Story 1. Allowing children to experience discomfort in situations of conflict and confrontation so they can develop the necessary skills to process and navigate said conflict. And with your guidance before and correction after, learn to compromise when necessary and resolve conflicts effectively. Story 2. Giving your kids enough space to fail and then try to figure it out on their own is essential. I see a lot of parents solving their children's problems without giving them a chance to find their own solution. Story 3. Leaving your children alone for age-appropriate periods of time is important. At some point, children have to learn to entertain themselves or to be responsible for their own meals, depending on how old they are, which is why the key part of that statement was age-appropriate. And I suppose it also depends on how safe your neighborhood is, too. Story 4. Not being a helicopter parent means letting your kids figure things out for themselves, not mediating every argument and letting them have unsupervised, but safe play with friends. Story 5. Making your kids help with chores from an early age is just teaching them good habits and skills. When I grew up, we had a rule in my house. The person who cooks doesn't have to do the dishes. If you didn't set the table and didn't cook, you had to wash dishes. And ironically, because of that, I became a really good cook because I hated doing dishes. So I learned how to cook everything. Story 6. Not encouraging them to clean their plates of everything on it is important. This also applies to not making them eat everything, even if they serve themselves. Young kids actually require much less than most parents expect, but they do like to eat more often. Regularly forcing them to eat past their feelings of full leads to long-lasting overeating. Story 7. Letting kids engage in age-appropriate risky play. Trying to protect them from everything is bad parenting. Let them climb, run, jump, dig, throw, etc. They will become more spatially aware of their bodies, physically literate, and more active. A very basic example, we taught our daughter to go up and down the stairs as soon as she started crawling at about 12 months. We always supervised when she was a baby. Once she was walking up and down the stairs was another first skill we helped her learn. By the time she was 18 months old, we took the baby gate down. She was so confident on the stairs that we just walked over to supervise whenever she went to the stairs, and only blocked the stairs when we were not able to supervise her, like cooking or cleaning while she played independently. My niece, on the other hand, has been continually discouraged from using the stairs because it is too dangerous. She is not allowed to use the stairs alone. She is 4. She always has accidents around the stairs if she tries to go near them. She is developing typically and does not have special needs. Story 8. Taking their teacher's side, your child is being difficult. Yes, they are 6 years old, and yes, 6-year-olds are talkative. But there are 30 other 6-year-olds in the classroom, and if the teacher needs to come and tell you your child is talkative and being disruptive, do something about it. Story 9. Gentle parenting has become criticized as a cover story for parents who choose not to discipline their children, which has contributed to its bad reputation. However, when implemented correctly, it aims to avoid yelling at children and focuses on explaining the reasons behind directives, rather than instilling fear to elicit compliance. Story 10. My dad had a business in another town around 30 miles away. You have to change buses to reach there. He goes there once a week to check accounts and distribute wages. Around when I was 9, he started taking me with him when he did it, and a year later, he trusted me to do it on my own. All I had to do was take the checks, catch a bus, then another, give them to the supervisor there, and bring back the accounts. I believe his trust that I could do this on my own so early in my life incredibly boosted my confidence in myself. Story 11. Using logical consequences as learning experiences. Refuse to put on your coat to go to the playground? Then either we don't go to the playground, or we go and you get to be cold enough to be miserable while your warm siblings are running around playing. Story 12. Many people believe that being open and honest with your children isn't the best approach. But after becoming a teen mom, I promised myself I'd never shy away from the uncomfortable topics. We discuss everything at home at appropriate ages, of course. I truly believe this has given my children a safe space to turn to when they have questions, face issues, or even if they make mistakes. I would much prefer they talk to me than keep secrets. Parents, talk to your children about the birds and the bees, and ensure they have access to protection or birth control, or better yet, both. Story 13. Ignoring when your child is having a tantrum is often advised. As long as they aren't hurting themselves, someone else, or destroying things, the best approach is to let them tire themselves out. Parents give in far too often, and this teaches the child, "Oh, mom and dad will give me what I want. I just need to persist long enough," which will lead to more and more tantrums down the line. Operant conditioning done inadvertently is difficult to undo. Please note there is a subtle but important difference between a tantrum and a meltdown. A tantrum, by and large, is an attention-seeking behavior where the child wants something. A meltdown occurs when someone is overstimulated or overwhelmed sensorially or emotionally and is just trying to regulate themselves but having a hard time. The latter does need attention and care, with reassurance that they'll be okay. Story 14. Let your children experience boredom in a child-friendly environment. For example, if you are at home, you do not need to constantly keep them entertained because that won't teach them self-reliance nor foster opportunities for creativity. Story 15. For parents, it is actually good not to make your kids the highest priority all the time. To consciously plan and take the effort and time to prioritize your partner and yourself regularly. A happy, healthy relationship between parents is worth so much more than the occasional bouts of inconvenience, missing the parents, or whatever opportunity cost these times have for kids. Story 16. Allowing your children to tell you they don't want to do certain things is important. Of course, they need to do their homework, but I am not forcing them to hug anyone, relatives or not. Their no should be respected. Story 17. Treating siblings differently in some ways. I don't mean having a golden child and a scapegoat. I mean tailoring your parenting to the needs of individual children. One child might be ready for certain responsibilities at an earlier age than another. One might need more support for their social life than the other. I think you have to be open to changing that if it's causing feelings of unfairness, but overall, fair doesn't mean equal. Story 18. Just in general, making them do things they don't want to do sometimes. Whether that be chores, having regular attendance at school, or keeping commitments. Too many people create an environment for their children of 100% comfort and getting their way all the time, and those children grow up to be the worst kind of entitled adults because their concept of what is and isn't fair gets so distorted. In their mind, fair means everybody and everything being catered to their comfort 24/7, and that's obviously just not how life actually works. Story 19. Setting boundaries often looks like bad parenting but is actually good parenting. My toddler isn't allowed to kick down the door when I'm in the bathroom, but I know so many other parents who let their kids follow them in. I've been criticized for locking the door and wanting to poop in peace. But what if she needs something? What if an emergency happens? She just loves you. How can you be so cruel? See also, eating off of my plate, treating me like a jungle gym, screaming at me, etc. I'm a mom, but I'm also a person with thoughts and feelings. Story 20. Taking children to funerals. I get it. Don't take them to every funeral when it's not relevant. However, a friend of mine was scolded for taking their 8-year-old to her granddad's funeral. The granddad had been living with them. Why would the child not be involved in mourning? It's going to scar the child more if they aren't involved. Story 21. This may or may not be controversial, but my mom got me alcohol when I was 17. However, it wasn't let's get this teenager drunk. She realized that I was going to college and I didn't know my limits as I'd never been drunk before. In Texas, where I'm from, it's actually legal to let your kids have a little at home. She wanted my first drunk experience to be at home and safe. She also nursed me through my hangover. At the time, I was like, oh wow, this is so bad. I can't believe you're condoning this. But I understood when I got to college. I knew several girls who had been sheltered like I was, and they got trashed at their first party. Couple were raped. I had the understanding to know my limit or what being drunk was supposed to feel like as opposed to being drugged. I'm positive it saved me more than once. To be clear, I'm not condoning doing shots with your 4-year-old, but safe, supervised drinking when said teen is about to leave the nest. It also made me comfortable to open up to her when I experimented with recreational drugs. I didn't feel vilified for experimenting. The focus was entirely on my well-being. Story 22. Severe disciplinary action for severe offenses. I'm not talking about abuse, but removal of privileges. As an example, my 14-year-old nephew got caught with heroin in his backpack. His parents got him drug tested, and he tested positive for opioids. They sent him to inpatient therapy for 30 days, followed by an outpatient therapist that he's going to continue to see until further notice. They took away all of his devices and prohibited all screen time for the summer. He had a full-time babysitter for the summer and wasn't allowed to leave the property without supervision. For entertainment, he was given dozens of choices between non-screen related hobbies, like various arts and crafts, gardening, and more, that my brother funded and supported. He was allowed to have select friends over on weekends, but only with supervision and still no screens. The rest of my family thought that my brother was being too harsh and believed that kids are going to experiment. Story 23. Not forcing your child to eat everything on their plate. Our rule is if you don't eat what we gave you, then instead of a sweet treat, you get a healthy alternative. On the other hand, if you eat at least half of your plate, then you can have a dessert of your choice. But none of that "you eat that or you starve" nonsense. Story 24. Standing by calmly while your child has a tantrum. From experience, I can say that many attempts at intervention in these moments only add fuel to the fire. Little kids have big feelings, and they have zero coping skills to manage them. As parents, we teach our kids those skills, but it takes time. It's not our job to handle our children's feelings. It's our job to teach them how to manage their own feelings. Story 25. Teaching them that it's okay to not share their things, but also that it's okay that others don't share with them. Do you walk up to a friend with a luxury car and say, "It's my turn now. Give me the keys"? No, unless you're a carjacker, you don't. This can be done tactfully, though, and I think that's the part that some parents miss. Communal toys are communal also. I'm strictly speaking about personal property. I'd always ask my kid to put away any toys she didn't want to share before playdates, and obviously guided her in such a way that if she wanted to share, she would, which was admittedly most of the time, but also if her friend didn't want to share, to drop it and move on. I didn't want her to grow up with a sense of entitlement, like, "I'm entitled to the use of your property solely because I'm here with you." Also, and this one I get pretty pressed about when people make their nasty comments about it, leaving an item that you absolutely need to get into work in the back seat with your baby before leaving the house for daycare drop-off. You care about your purse, phone, fob more than your kid. You shouldn't be a parent. Now, I have a healthy mistrust of my own sleep-deprived brain that had gone on autopilot more than once, driving by a turn I had to make because I'd usually be going straight, well before being in charge of a helpless infant. Of course, I'm not going to trust my fallible human brain. I obviously love my child more than anything else in this world, but having a breastfed baby, I was the one up all night with feedings, I was working 9 hours a day, and I was doing the drop-offs and pickups. I was aware that one minor change in routine could result in a hot car death. So yeah, I put my fob to get into the building in my back seat with the infant seat, which ensured my kid would potentially only be alone in the car for the 25 or so steps from my designated parking spot to the employee entrance. It never happened, but I felt a lot more secure knowing I had that safety net. I also told my daycare provider to call me if my kid didn't show up and I hadn't told her I was off work. She did call once in the 5 years my daughter was in daycare, but she had forgotten I told her my company was closed for a minor holiday. I've personally been called a bad parent who cares more about objects than her child for this several times, but it's quite the opposite, and I will die on this hill. Story 26. I've been reading these studies about overpraise leading to narcissistic traits in children. Basically, telling your child they're the best at everything and not reprimanding them enough. They can't take feedback or criticism and think they're better than others. They can't admit when they behaved poorly. They turn out selfish. Story 27. Not buying them everything they ask for, especially not 150-pound shoes, 80-pound belts, and 100-pound t-shirts. I know parents worry their kids will get picked on, but why spend so much money on things that are passing trends and are no better than clothing that's 75% cheaper? It's all about brands these days, and I think it's dumb and a stupid thing to teach your kids. Story 28. Letting your kids say the proper names for genitalia like penis, vagina, anus, testicles, rather than cute names like my special spot, is important. Statistics show that your child is less likely to be a target for sexual abuse if they use the proper names. I have worked with abused children. Predators can sometimes get away because my special spot can be misconstrued for anything in court. Story 29. Not really bad parenting per se, but talking to your kids with an adult voice, no baby talk. It might sound a bit cold at the time because most parents try to keep it light and fun for the kids with the baby talk voice. But whenever they do start speaking, they will be more familiar with sentence structure and better pronunciation if they are not used to words sounding like this.